the Union, another YouTube-only installment of Fate of the Union. Today we're going to go over this relatively short video from the Young Turks regarding a police shooting of a supposed security guard, a young 18-year-old Hispanic man in California. The first and previous YouTube video covered Trevor Noah's coverage and myriad of inaccuracies regarding the Rayshard Brooks shooting down in Georgia, and the case in which Officer Rolfe currently stands unjustifiably charged with felony murder, various counts of aggravated assault, and an ancillary charge of violation of the oath of office, basically lying in the line of duty in regards to an official investigation here. You'll also see that, yes, the video is a little bit on the longer side. It is meant for an audio podcast component as well. So to the extent that anyone thought they were forced to watch that, that's not the case. If we do need to get out an ABV for anyone, a depraved madman, keeping anyone watching that video, we'll be sure to tend to that. I don't know if we have a reverse Kate Yup situation on our hands. But anyway, we're going to go into this Young Turks video, and it'll be useful to give a little bit of background before we play the video. So this is from CBS Los Angeles, as well as the New York Daily News. I'm sure other outlets have similar accounts, but that's where this particular account of the case comes from. A teenage security guard keeping watch over a California auto body shop was killed by LAPD officers while he worked his night shift. The victim, identified by CBS Los Angeles as Andres Guardado, was shot around 6:30 p.m. on Thursday. Deputies patrolling in the town of Gardena said they spotted the 18-year-old flash his gun, before he fled from officers. The sheriff's office gave a statement saying that the individual produced a handgun and then began running southbound away from the deputies through businesses nearby. Deputies engaged in a short foot pursuit between the two businesses. At some point, the deputies contacted the suspect, and that's when the deputy-involved shooting occurred. According to the LA Sheriff's Department, deputies recovered a gun at the scene that was devoid of any identifying marks or serial numbers and contained a loaded large-capacity prohibited magazine, so a magazine the size of which is beyond the legal limits in California. Importantly, and in contrary to this particular retelling of the case by the Young Turks and some other outlets, deputies also were sure to mention that Guardado was not recognized as a licensed security officer by the state of California. In California, there's certain registration and licensing requirements that one needs to meet in order for him to be lawfully employed as a security guard and carry out those kinds of responsibilities. Deputies also said that Guardado was not wearing any identifiable clothing or uniform, indicating he was working in the capacity of a security guard, which will be important for the Young Turks' rehashing of this case. We'll see in a moment. In fact, the owner of the shop confirmed Guardado was not actually a formal employee of the shop. The current account makes it seem like Guardado was interested in the work that the shop was doing, so he kind of hung around, wanted to learn a little bit more about it, and since he was around so much and interested in what the shop was doing, an ancillary effect of that was that he kind of kept watch, but again, without a licensed firearm or any kind of formal employment agreement or licensing to be a security guard in the first place. The Homicide Bureau of the LA Sheriff's Department confirmed that Guardado's gun did not have a serial number and was modified in such a way that a person could not buy it at a normal sporting goods store. The magazine, frame, and topslide were not even made by the same manufacturer, actually. The sheriff's office is investigating whether the firearm was a, quote, a ghost gun, meaning that a private citizen, whether it be Guardado or a previous owner, assembled kind of a hodgepodge of components of various firearms, likely to avoid any tracing of the firearm. So several of these components to this story, the licensing requirement, and the appearance of Guardado on the night of the shooting, insofar as him wearing any identifiable clothing, is going to be important for the coming video here from the Young Turks.
Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies fatally shot an 18-year-old auto body shop security guard. Now, this happened, because the sheriff's deputies claim that they saw him flash a gun. That's their justification,
And right away we see that it's kind of a pithy throwaway statement by Anna Kasparian that they claim that he flashed a gun and says it in such a way as if that wouldn't be legally justified to see that someone brandishing a gun, and an illegal gun, we now know in hindsight, would not be a justifiable case to think that one is under a deadly threat. But we'll continue.
Even though we have few details and the story is continuing to develop, the one thing that has been confirmed by the sheriff deputies themselves is they shot this 18-year-old as he was running away. His name is Andres Guardado, and he was, again.
And take note of what this kid looks like. And I only bring up his appearance because that's going to come into play here with particularly Cenk Uygur's account of this case, and particularly the victim of the shooting in this case.
And a security guard for an auto body shop. In fact, the owner of the auto body shop said the following: "We had a security guard that was out front because we had just had certain issues with people tagging and stuff like that. And then the police came up and they pulled their guns on him and he ran because he was scared and they shot and killed him. He got a clean background and everything. There's no reason." Now, it's unclear whether he was wearing his security guard uniform.
It's not unclear. It's absolutely clear. There was an investigation done at the crime scene. Presumably there are subsequent autopsy reports being done. They know for a fact that this young man was not wearing any identifiable clothing, anything to say that he was affiliated with the shop in any way, or worked in any kind of security guard or in an arrangement where the shop owner would even know that he's on the premises. So that statement is absolutely incorrect.
The cops claim that he was not. I am not willing to just believe the narrative coming from the sheriff's department.
And there you have it. This is going to be a consistent theme for the remainder few minutes of this video, is that they will take portions of the statement of the shop owner, and whether it be the victim's family, as gospel, and ask absolutely no scrutinizing questions of those statements, but take no statement from the police, no matter how simple an observation and no matter how plainly obvious, as true or accurate.
So I'm just putting that out there. But they claim he wasn't wearing a uniform. But honestly, even if it's confirmed that he's not wearing a uniform, he would.
I'm gonna stop it right there. That is a really kind of shifty hedging of your bets. Even if he wasn't wearing a security guard uniform X, Y, and Z, he wasn't. We know he wasn't. This is going to be played off, if they even do a subsequent video on this case, as if they were just covering their bases because they're trying to play both sides of the fence. But we just went over from a very simple review of the crime scene that he was not wearing an identifiable uniform. So this kind of fence sitting and having the best of both worlds in this statement really isn't true. And it does have an impact on this case. It does affect the officer's initial perception of a younger guy with a firearm on the premises if he apparently does not have authority to be there. That of course is going to change their perception, their initial observations of the scene at the shop.
He was running away. He was running away. So why was there a lethal weapon used? Why was he shot and killed
Well, he was shot and killed, and this is where the current state of affairs in the investigation leads us. It was shot because he flashed a gun at the officers. He was a shady character, according to their perspective, not in any way visibly affiliated with the shop. Even the shop owner's own statements say that they've been having a problem with crime in the area, and their initial perception of him with a firearm and not visually speaking, not authorized to be on the premises, and then flashing a gun. That's what led to the justification. That's where the investigation currently stands.
He was running away and did not pose an imminent threat to anyone, right? And by the way, his family.
She does. That's an imminent threat, of course, is a legal conclusion, and she obviously has not enough information to say that. The investigation's not done yet. All we know is that the only chronology of events supplied to us right now are from the sheriff's department. So, of course, that will have to be confirmed by an investigation before we go forward and get a final conclusion in this case. But to say that he didn't pose an imminent threat, at least you could say that the officer's account and the sheriff's statements, insofar as having a brief beginning to the investigation, is at least an account to consider, in that a weapon was flashed and appeared to be a shady character on the premises. To say that he didn't pose an imminent threat is not backed up by anything at this point.
family is denying that he had a weapon on him. The cops claim
the family of course is grieving the loss of this young man, and pending the investigation we'll find out exactly what the interaction was like with the police officers. But he being away from the family and being in a completely different location, he may not have owned a weapon that they knew of, but that's not to say that he definitively did not have a weapon on him.
Claim that they retrieved a weapon from the scene.
Yeah, look, first a point about the power of propaganda. In my
the sheer unabashed hypocrisy of Cenk Uygur talking about the power of propaganda. We'll go into it in a second, because Cenk's gonna say some astonishing things given his track record of examining cases, especially those involving police officers.
Entire life up until now, and mostly including now, whenever you got a local news version of this, they would always say, and the police say this as if it was fact.
That's just not true. And Cenk knows this isn't true. He's an attorney. He practiced law at a very prestigious firm for quite a number of years. He knows that this is absolutely not true. The police statements are used in local police reports because local journalism, I should say, my mistake. It's used in local journalism and local media outlets because they get the facts of the case first. They know the area. They know the geography. They more regularly report on happenings in the region. And early on in the case, like this, in the days after, when an investigation is not done, unless you have an eyewitness, there's only so many accounts of the events that you have to run on. If you're going to run an article, you have to say something about the chronology of events. So they simply say what they know at the time. And local journalism, from my perspective, at least personally, there's always a disclaimer saying that the investigation is underway, it's ongoing, it's the ultimate findings and any charges are pending the outcome of so-and-so agency's investigation of this case.
And that is how they tell you, black people are lying, the police are not.
That's, again, a ridiculous overstatement by Cenk Uygur. I read you the relevant facts from the local CBS station. There's nothing in there insinuating that the cops are absolutely right. And not only this family, who are not black, by the way, that'll come in a second. They're not black, they're Hispanic. So Cenk's also completely off base about this. It's very clear Cenk did absolutely no work in covering this case, none whatsoever. But the local affiliates, the local towny kind of outlets, and even CBS Los Angeles are careful to include both the police statements and their perspective given this early stage of the investigation, but also the statement of the family and the statement of the shop owner to see what they know about this kid, what was his background. So it is pretty even-keeled in that regard as far as getting actual statements out there from the local press.
They've said it literally millions of times in every market.
No, they haven't said it once.
In the country, always reinforcing police are good people, they always tell the truth, and if black people disagree with them, they're all liars. Millions and millions of liars.
Again, just the glaring hypocrisy from a man who not only is strawmanning local journalism, and particularly speaking in this case, but a man whose own commentary does the exact opposite. The Young Turks never believe a police investigation. They've completely botched the Officer Rolf Rayshard Brooks shooting, completely skipped over the fact that he posed a deadly threat. If you go back to even the Michael Brown case, they ran with every lie in that case that was told on mainstream media and was told from compromised left-leaning outlets. They ran with the story regardless of the fact that there were numerous accounts, even from half a dozen black witnesses, saying that Michael Brown did start a fight with Officer Wilson. He did pose a threat. Nevertheless, that was all disregarded. It's just utter hypocrisy, beyond being a simple straw man argument.
Okay. Now, once we started seeing the videos, hey, turns out the cops lie. Well, I'm going to say on a regular basis. So
on a regular basis, name one case. It happens all the time, right? You're a supposed newsman. It happens all the time. Name one case for us, Cenk.
So, is it 100% of the time the cops are lying? Of course not. Is it 100% of the time that they're in trouble, that we find at least some lie? Pretty close to 100%, yes.
He's just... Listen, go look at the comments for this video. It's incredible. I'm surprised it has the like-to-dislike ratio that it has, because almost every single comment on here either calls them race baiters, is saying you're going to eat your words when the footage comes out, points out to the fact that even given the few facts we have, at least about this young man's appearance and what the cops perceived, even those brief recitation of the facts, they get absolutely incorrect. It goes back to lying or lazy. Cenk's lazy. He very clearly knows nothing about this case. He doesn't even know the ethnicity of the victim. Anna, I'm a little bit more willing to go into lying. She at least knows a little bit more about this case and is actually going to correct Cenk on one particular falsehood that he's making up on the spot.
So if you tell me to believe the cops, yeah, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. And so I asked this morning in our production meeting.
How about Officer Wilson? We should have believed him. He was exactly correct. Poor Officer Rolfe, we should believe him. The guy's being charged with violation of oath of office, of lying about the events of the case. Meanwhile, his account is completely corroborated by a 911 call, the transcript, officer cam footage, surveillance footage.
Why is this a giant story? It looks like there's another African-American that they shot in the back. He was clearly running away.
You mean like Michael Brown? Kind of like that? When you guys lied for months about that case, and then it came out that Officer Wilson was exactly correct about his recitation of the facts? You mean like that?
I know why. There's no video. And so until the video emerged...
There was video of Officer Rolfe shooting. There's video of every second of his interaction. Yet you guys lied about that case too.
The cops will probably lie about it. Everybody in the press will report as if they're not historically massive liars and try to blame the kid. He's 18 years old. So,
and by the way, just quick correction. He's Latino. He's not black, but it doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter. Then why did you both lead with his race? Why are you talking about the police interaction with a certain race en masse? It very clearly does matter, at least according to you guys.
The victim of police brutality and was not an imminent threat to anyone and shouldn't have been shot and killed as he was running away.
Why? Why wasn't he an imminent threat? They're completely unproven at this point. My perspective right now is it looks like he was in a shady situation, at least as far as the cops were concerned, had no indication that he was supposed to be on the premises. And if he did flash a gun and then run away into a crime-infested area, then the officers were faced with a deadly threat, and then a deadly threat followed up by him running into the community with an illegal firearm. That's the only recount of events that we have right now. If it changes, we'll follow up and give a fuller explanation, but that's the only retelling of the case that we have right now.
And there's some folks who are Afro-Latino. That's not...
This young man is very clearly not Afro-Latino. This is Cenk trying to cover up in real time that he clearly did no legwork or research on this case and was just entering regressive agenda point number 4 and was just going with the rote police are racist. They're liars too. We're going to add that to boot. But it's clearly just compensation for the fact that he doesn't know anything about this case.
But I appreciate the correction. And so he's a person of color either way, right? And so look,
right. He was a person of color either way. So agenda fulfilled.
Final thing about this is so important. You think, well, okay, let's say the cops aren't lying, he did have a gun. But what are they supposed to do? No, they're not supposed to shoot him. So, for example, there's tons and tons of...
Again, and Cenk is... nice face, Cenk. Cenk is a lawyer and has some kind of background and should understand very basic principles of probable cause. Even if he did have a gun, well, then we need to see to what extent he brandished it, to what extent the officers perceived a threat. And that's to be determined in the final investigation of the case, but in more general terms, how long are the cops supposed to let this go on of a guy brandishing a weapon, perhaps brandishing it at them, and then running with the weapon into the greater community, and a community that faces high rates of crime? A probable cause would dictate that there's got to be some line in the sand where the officers have to make a decision. They simply can't wait till after the fact and slap cuffs on him. There has to be some perception of reality and, again, probable cause.
The white people who show up to protest, who show up in their regular lives, who show up to Walmart carrying AR-15s.
Yes, they don't brandish the weapon. It's just on their person. Again, people kill people with guns. The gun doesn't have a life of its own.
and they don't get murdered. They don't get shot.
Because they don't flash a gun at anyone. If it's safely tied around their back, or if they're carrying it on their hip or their ankle, it's not putting anyone in danger.
Cop doesn't see a white person with a gun and think, oh, I have to shoot him in the back immediately. If they're walking, running, it doesn't matter. They never get shot. Okay, it's not fair to say never. Some cops also do shoot unarmed white people. Totally.
Yeah, they do. And they're playing unarmed white people more, at least in raw numbers, more than unarmed black people that are shot and killed by the police each year.
Totally unjustifiably. But historically and disproportionately, it is people of color. So
that's not true.
Don't assume because he has a gun and he's a person of color that they should have shot him. That's an insane and racist assumption.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks.
You're the one with the racist assumption, Cenk. You're the one who's ascribing race to officers, race to suspect, so therefore, here's the outcome of the case. That's the racism behind this. And I'm so glad this comment section is just a feast. It's a 5-course gourmet dinner of calling these people out on their lies. I encourage everyone to go look at this because for a simple 5-minute video, the like to dislike ratio is maybe just an effect of their younger viewers just seeing a headline they like and liking the video. But the comment section is really more representative of how people view this kind of advocacy and really this kind of downright laziness and falsehoods, depending on which one of these characters that you watch on YouTube. So speaking of lying about a case and the races of the suspects and the individuals involved, we have another video coming sometime in the next week or so. The LA Times has released a pretty sizable article, opinion piece on the case of Kevin Cooper. If you haven't, go back in our podcast archive and watch, or listen rather, to our recount of really soup to nuts, everything from that case from start to finish. The LA Times is really running with falsehoods that were perpetuated by the New York Times and Nicholas Kristof, but have been disproven for a while, publicly speaking, and really were not verifiable given the procedural history of the case to begin with. But we're going to go over that article in a more brief background and state of affairs for where Kevin Cooper is. We're standing at about 18 months since his latest DNA testing, which I'll admit is a little long at this point. We really should be finding out what the results are by now, but we'll keep an eye on that case. In the meantime, you can listen to our episode on that. I know that Devin Tracy over at Atheism is Unstoppable has a very good multiple part series of that, and on video, if you want to watch visually, it's very, very good. So if you guys want to go watch that, I encourage you to do so. So that's it for us today. This has been Fate of the Union. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.